banda toque rock y lo demás cuando lo piden. Sabemos bien que aquí hacer de todo lo exigen. Es un rock chiquillo, sabor más bien latino. Esta música es esperanza, esta música es paciencia. Es como un tren que ha pasado con un cargo de emociones. Nos pasó en la estación, pero dormíamos sentados.
Y mi banda toque rock.
Porque nos ve y porque no puede, y porque falta de ir, por poner tras su quimera.
Y no despierte, no, 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 todavía no, y no nos pare, no, 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 todavía no. Y mi banda toque rock. Yes, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of the Grossman Files. We got a great one for you today. And as we start with the joyous sound of early Menudo, band near and dear to my heart, a band with an extremely rich and interesting history, which I'm just finding out about now. I'm kind of late to the party. But yeah, my newest obsession, which is actually an old obsession. I actually wanted to join Menudo when I was 10 years old. Now, in light of the things I've learned about their founder, Edgardo Diaz, I'm glad that my mom did not bring me to that audition. But yes, I remember practicing in front of the mirror, dreaming that I could be on stage with those guys. And so, from something very joyous to something, well, not quite so joyous, but something which I actually find quite fun to talk about. And I try to make it educational too. And what are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about the king of the Maurons. The king of the Maurons. And we are talking about Jonathan Mythsell. Because he's selling a myth. He's literally selling a myth, this guy. He has a book called Before Son of Sam. Everybody go and buy it. Please spend the $1. Maybe it's $2 now on Amazon. Please go buy it. I'm not worried about this dude in the least, even though for some reason he publicly still to this day, as we're going to find out, he's still calling me a front man for the process. I mean, this is crazy shit. And so I'm not really in a war because believe me, I'm well aware that if I ignore this stuff, nobody would ever hear about it. But what I try to do is use this stuff as a way to educate the audience on Sam. Because that's what we're here to do. We're here to learn about this case, although as I'm quickly finding out, and actually as I've known about for a while, but some of the audience who are pushing back on me now are making actually some good comments, and they're basically like saying, dude, it's over. Like, what's there to learn? And the truth is, actually, there's still a bit to learn. Why? Because, well, Berkowitz is still hoosowing. He's still playing people off. He's still using people. He's still manipulating. He's still an egomaniac. He's still a narcissist. And he loves the attention that his acolytes, the lunatics from Olathe, Kansas, Chris Claw, and her whole coterie of weirdos who I thought would learn from recent behind-the-scene events to like shun this person as one of the most toxic people ever. But yet I still see, for some inexplicable reason, Rocker Mike, who just looks terrible. I actually feel bad for the guy. Something must have happened in his personal life, and we won't bleed on that because I'm trying to be nice to that poor guy. But you're still hanging out with Claw. But yo, in this video that I saw, and I'm not going to tell people where it is. Those who know. At least I can say for Mike Baker, Rocker Mike, the dude who pays for views. I'm still not going to be very nice to him. I'm just going to tell the truth. Our video got 14,000 views overnight. Yeah, okay, as if I believe that. At least his body language when Chris Claw is talking her out there insane lunatic stuff, he's trying to calm it down a little bit. And from what I hear behind the scenes, he actually does know that she's crazy. The quote that I got is, she's bananas. He knows that she's bananas. So anyway, we'll just leave that there for now. God bless all of them. I wish them well. But I try to use these things as educational. And the reason why I choose Jon Mythsell is because unlike all these other people, he's actually making an attempt, I suppose, to talk about Son of Sam. Whereas the other people are just talking about me. And that's cool. But that's why we address Mythsell as opposed to these other people's works, because they're not actually dealing in the real world as presently constituted. But Mythsell, well, he's not either. But at least he's attempting to talk about the case. So that's why we do these. So anyway, we want to say hello to my girl Ruby. We want to say hello to Victoria. We got, who else is in the chat? Not many other people, but that's cool. I'm sure people will come in as time goes on. So yeah, so we're here to talk about this new article. Mythsell listened to me at the end of my last show, which wasn't too long. I said, Mythsell, keep it up, man. Keep it up. Please put out more articles. And he did. And though this one is a little more wordy and a little more boring, I think I could actually pull some more comedy out of it than the last one. And then, of course, try to educate, especially the newbies, on Sam, because we're getting a lot of new people watching the show in the last couple of weeks. So anyway, we shall continue. So first thing I want to show is that Mythsell is absolutely 100% full of shit. This guy is a liar. He knows he's lying because he knows about the work that we've done, particularly vis-a-vis Billy the Artist. So I wanted to just compare two interviews that he did. One with the retard Operation GCD, the guy barely above subhuman level. And then one that he did just last week with Ed Flopperman, or as I like to call him. Well, that's what I like to call him, but his real name is Ed Opperman, but actually the dude is a total loser. Totally jealous of what we've done here. Absolute 100% reprobate. Total manipulator. I don't know whether he's really stupid or whether he's just playing a game. I haven't quite figured that out. Not that I really care. But we're going to listen to an excerpt that he just did an interview with Jon Mythsell. And this whole interview is about me. They're talking about how I'm a shill for the NYPD and controlled opposition put out there by the process. I mean, just saying things. Again, that's the Maury Terry way. Actually, all of the reprobates are coming back. The seriously mentally ill Professor Harnash is back. Seriously delusioned, as if the last 4 years never happened. It's strange. He's still using the same thumbnails from 4 years ago. And he recently teamed up with the lunatic Chris Claw from Olathe, Kansas. So there should be some fun stuff coming out of there, because she's ostensibly friends with Shayna Glassman. Although I'm not sure I believe that. And yet Haran talks recently about how Glassman, the father, faked his death and was really Berkowitz's handler for Wackenhut. I mean, this is, and he's the dude who originated the Manny's father was Epstein and Operation Mockingbird. He's the reprobate who started that. And talking about looking terrible, that dude looks like straight up on death's door. I don't know what it is, guys. All this hatred towards Manny, it's really aging you very rapidly. I don't know what happened to Mike. I mean, he really looks bad. I've been reading some of his poetry. He got into a car wreck, and I really wasn't that sympathetic. I mean, maybe I'm not a good person, okay? I've never said that I was. So he recently says, I don't know how he found out about that, implying that I have some secret source of information. Dude, you wrote a poem about it, which I read. I mean, you should at least acknowledge and respect the fact that I actually read your work. Whereas if you actually watched mine, maybe you would learn a thing or two about Sam, which is, of course, what we're all here to talk about. So these reprobates are all coming out of the woodwork. Frank DeGennaro recently crawled out from under his rock and told his side of the story about how he accosted Wendy. And it's actually interesting to hear his side of the story, because I got Wendy's side of the story, which I actually believe, and we got his side of the story, which I'm sure he thinks is true, but I don't believe it. And anyway, we'll just leave that alone. These guys think that somehow or other this is interesting. Keep it up, guys. Keep it up. I love it. You're giving me such amazing material to work with. But so here he is with the absolute subhuman homunculus. I don't know what this guy's deal is. It's totally sub-zero IQ. So here we have Mythsell, and this is the what I want to point out to you is the hypocrisy and the lying. This dude is about to go off on Billy the artist, right? We saw this at our last show. He's about to start talking about, man, I don't know you, you don't know me. Then he says, my narrative doesn't concern you. Let's just watch him say it.
Right. Well, if they weren't feeling threatened, then they wouldn't behave like this so routinely.
We're not threatened. You just give us good and there's no us and there's no we. You just give me good comedy fodder, dude. How many times do I have to say that?
For sure.
But
For sure.
I don't, and with particular reference to videos that have been made about me attacking me by name and insulting me in the last couple of days, I've made it clear to all of these individuals that I don't watch desperate clickbait videos.
That didn't hit. That didn't hit. Keep swallowing.
My understanding is that a character named Billy the artist had a special message for me. I don't know what that special message was, but what I would say to Billy at this point is you don't know me. My narrative has nothing to do with you.
My narrative.
And whenever you're feeling adventurous, you and I'll get together.
Yeah.
Because I'll have something for you too, and it won't be dope money, motherfucker.
Motherfucker. Dude was thinking that he was yelling at Alan Masters, right? Dude thought he was Wheat Carr yelling at Alan Masters right there. So you heard him say that. You heard him very clearly say to all of us that my narrative does not concern you. Well, let's see what he said just last week. Remember, that was a year ago. Let's see what this guy said. Again, I'm pointing out the hypocrisy. When I say things, I back it up and I use firsthand primary evidence. In this case, that evidence consists of the words coming out of this dude's mouth. I mean, can you get any closer to firsthand primary evidence than that? I don't think so. I mean, maybe it's possible. If somehow you could find a mind reader that would confirm that what he was saying was truthfully what he was believing, then at that point, maybe that person would be more reliable. But since I can't find a mind reader, I got to take the man at his word. So what you heard him say right there was, Billy, my narrative doesn't concern you. And if you want to meet, I got more than dope money for you. let's see what he said on Flopperman just last week regarding Billy the Artist. Remember, he said, my narrative doesn't concern you. What does that mean? That means that I don't need you, Billy, to tell my story. I don't need you to prove my case correct. I don't need your testimony, Billy, in any way, shape, or form to craft a narrative. My narrative doesn't concern you. I mean, is there any other way to interpret what we've just heard him say right before he threatened bodily harm on Billy the Artist, who, by the way, was actually trying to school you very nicely. We did a video where we addressed it to Mythsell, again, trying to just teach this guy, show you that the man who, Maury, like the actual person from the book, is telling you that he lied and that he made up the story. There was no Ken, there was no Maria, there was no Moloch. Didn't go to the funeral of anybody appreciably even remotely related to what came out in the book. He trolled Maury Terry for drug money and dentures for his mother. He gave Maury comic book art, and then I found the art, and we have seen it ad nauseum. I mean, what more do you want? But he said that he said that the narrative doesn't concern him. So now this is an hour-long interview, and I suggest you watch it. Let's give this loser a few views. What's it up to? It's up to 75 views after 3 days. Flopperman, he could have been nice to me. He chose not to be nice to me. I was nice to him when I first came out in 2021. And my video series went viral. After 5 videos, I was already getting calls from Josh Zeman. I was invited into the inner circle of the Maury Terry fans. I was already trying to make friends and make nice with Carl Denaro. Again, all truly coming from a good place in my heart. And then I get an email from Flopperman kissing my ass to be on his channel. I guess he saw Rocker Mike's 14,000 views overnight that were all bought. And I know that that's true because if you look at the comments, they're all fake, which are bought also. And if you look at the videos around it, they all get an average around 27 to 30 views. And I'm not talking 30K and 20, I'm talking 30 views. So maybe he thought that I was a big seller, and I wrote back to him a polite thing. I said, yo, Ed, hey, at that point I respected him. I actually thought that he was part of the Son of Sam Truth movement. I thought a legend was actually emailing me. I was quite flattered this guy was emailing me. So I said, yo, look, I don't have anything to tell you right now. I've done 5 videos. It's getting a little out of hand. Why don't we do this? Let's remain friends. This is my exact words to Opperman. I said, let's remain friends. And in a month, when I have more to say, I'll get in touch with you and I'll come on and we'll do a show together. It'd be fun. And then, I don't know, a day or two later, he writes back a very odd email saying, oh, I realize that you're friends with Jason Goodman, so therefore I want to have nothing to do with you. And I wrote back, I said, babe, fine. I don't even know if I wrote back. I might have wrote back something. But from that point on, this dude was my enemy. He became my enemy. I didn't make him that. Right? And then he goes on to do stupid shows like this with Mythsell, which he's been doing for a couple of years, and nobody cares. This is probably the first time in your life you're ever hearing about this. And if you're interested, let's see how many views it goes up after this show. We'll see how many people really care. He keeps on talking stuff about how my dad was involved with military intelligence, that I'm a process member, that I'm the cover-up artist. Let's hear what Mythsell says about Billy the Artist here. This is just a week ago.
Here is that there is information about the larger case that various agencies are still trying to conceal.
Right.
There's something that they still don't want people to know, including the family members of victims. There is still information about the case that's being hidden.
But do you have any specific theory that her connection to the Son of Sam cult?
Now they're talking about Maria or Suzette or somebody, maybe Susan Conway. I don't know. Let's see to see.
Well, yes, David Berkowitz identified her from a picture that he was shown by Maury Terry, and he said that's Maria. And in fact, that was the alias that she used, Maria Cortina. So Berkowitz admitted that he knew who she was and that he remembered her from Untermeyer Park.
So you just heard him use Billy the Artist's information, because the Maria Maria was a name that Billy made up. Just told, like Ken and Moloch, he made these names up. He's already told us this, and then he showed us the artwork. Maria was a Midas from Conan. So a year ago, he's talking about my narrative doesn't concern you, and then in this one, Flopperman asks him for specific incidents or evidence. What's going on, I wheel? It's like, yo, yeah, of course, there's evidence. Berkowitz identified Maria and remembered her from Untermeyer Park. So which is it, man? Is Billy the Artist not part of your narrative, or is he part of your narrative? And if he's part of your narrative, yo, I'm calling bullshit on that. Because you know that is just not true. Everybody, the people who hate my guts the most, even Neo, yes, the one. I'm just getting up this next slide here. Even Neo, yes, the one acknowledges Billy the Artist. So you know that that's a major thing in Son of Sam history. Not the real case of Son of Sam, because Billy, there was no Untermeyer Park. There was no, that stuff never existed. Maury Terry was the only person on earth to ever say these things. I don't understand modern day people like Josh Zeman, who still straddle the fence, even though he knows that it's bullshit too. But he's out there still giving interviews talking about, oh yeah, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. What does that mean, Josh? What sex, drugs, and rock and roll? Right? So this guy knows that this stuff exists, and just like everybody else, they ignore it. And that's not honest. That's what kind of makes me a little angry. I don't care if you acknowledge me. Like the whole People versus David Berkowitz site is basically populated with my files. But I'm not even mentioned on that site, except obliquely as a podcaster on YouTube. When the truth is, if I didn't pick up that camera in 2021, none of you would be here right now. And that includes all of the people who hate my guts, who have shows and are doing stuff. And none of you would be here now. You would still, and I would still be talking about the who's how about Moloch, and talking about Ken, and talking about Maria, and talking about John allegedly Wheaties on quote car, talking about Michael Vale Baron, Dave Charkowski car, and talking about Wheat car. Who was out riding down Bay 17th Street, almost getting into an accident, yelling out, motherfucker, at Alan Masters. It just didn't happen. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say here. And I'm trying to use this opportunity, my friend Mythsell. And hey, look, you might be watching right now. I'm going to invite you on, brother. Here's the link. This is only from Mythsell. Here's the link. It's in the chat. Why don't you call in and let's talk about what you just said. Forget about your talks about how I'm a process member and I'm a member of the NYPD intelligence squad, still working in 2026 to cover up Son of Sam or whatever lunacy. Look, that's your mental illness. But I want to deal with what you said about Billy, because we have a clear contradiction here. So let's see if Mythsell calls in. But this actually, before we get into Mythsell's Harnash article, and I don't know at this point if I even care about reading it, I actually want to bring up a wider notion, one in which that I've heard even the dummy Rena from the Gutter Snipes, absolute lowlife, but even she has brought up this question, which is like, what's it gonna take? This is when she's sitting there talking to Eric Galati, who 2 years ago she was calling the most vile names of, and he was saying the same about Neo, and Neo was saying that, and then they all became friends, and he's still on this trip about he's still on this trip about it was a collectivity with his fake British accent. If you listen to his things, he's still talking about, yeah, I can't walk. My legs, they won't let me walk, and I'm trying every day to strengthen. He was saying that to me in 2021. I mean, I feel bad for the guy. I mean, if you saw his legs, it's a horror show. I hung out with him one day. But, you know, other than that, I don't wish that on anybody. That's horrible health issues. But, dude, why are you kidding yourself? And why are you kidding us? You're not doing anything to change it. If you were, it'd be changed. Okay? So this dude is still talking about Berkey had help. And even Rena, right, who truly is very dense, not a smart person. She even says to him, yo, what's it going to take, man? Like, what's that one piece of evidence? Like, what's it going to be that finally convinces you? And so I thought about that question, and it made me realize that, like, yo, we have the forensics. We've proven conclusively on the Grossman files that Berkowitz did it forensically. We have his own admission, not only fully in 1979, and yes, Carl, that includes your shooting too, but it also includes Caparelli's book, Monster Mirror, who I give credit for. He's the only one of us who actually got Berkowitz to talk about any of this. And what did Berkowitz say? He says, I did it all alone. And you'll be shown. No, he didn't say you'll be shown, but he said, I did it all alone. I lied. I was under enormous pressure. And then, of course, from that, we at the Grossman files realized that enormous pressure was the bribes. The bribes. We realized at that point that we got to go into the archives, and we got it. This is what Mythsell should be doing, right? This is what all Son of Sam researchers should be doing. This is what only a handful of us did. You all know who you are. But that's okay. We were the only dweebs interested in this truly enough to go into it. And then we had the platform of the Grossman files to disseminate the information. So we went into the archives, and we realized that Maury was giving him crayons, coloring books, shirts, Bibles, filling up his commissary, being his mail courier, probably a financial interest with the father, Nat. Definitely passing messages between him and other convicts in other prisons, all sorts of really vile stuff that makes you wonder even more about Maury Terry's true nature and what this dude was all about. And we realized it was about the bribes. So that backed up Caparelli's book. See, that's what scholars do. We don't sit and perseverate about yellow Volkswagens that were just one car at a crime scene in New York City. I mean, cars park in New York City. Nobody knew that night that shooting was going to take place. The scene was not staged. It was just people living their lives. There were other cars there. So why is that hard to fathom? And so this is what we do. And yeah, I mean, this gives him a reason to keep going. That's fine. But like, you should take the personality of Grossman out of it And you should just realize that your shit's embarrassing at this point. We got Berkey's admission. We got the Brooklyn series where Catalano and I proved conclusively that every aspect of Maury Terry's version was complete and utter crap. And not only that, it was physically impossible. We're talking physics. We're talking sight lines. We're talking about light and dark. We're talking about times that it takes to run. We got into it all. Nobody's done what Catalano, me, and then Book Club behind the scenes. Although I think Book Club's no longer my friend, but that's all right. Whatever. The Freund series. Again, the triumvirate of me, Book Club, and Catalano, who conclusively proved every part of Maury Terry's story to be an outright lie. I mean, not only to be manipulated, but an outright lie. We got the Voskerichian series. We got the Placido series. We got Billy the artist. What's it going to take? What piece of evidence is going to override all of this? We got every other mole lie, like the dog year hoax, the Arliss Perry hoax, the Roger Flood hoax, the Karen Wallstrom hoax. We got questionable characters like Brother John. We got questionable characters like the spiritually sick snap suture Alex Ferrone, the child Paris who used knives in the commission of his crimes and who in fact was Vinny and Danny. Maury Terry's secret prison informant in The Ultimate Evil was actually a child rapist who went to high school with Maury Terry, by the way. Mike Lorenzo found that out. We're not sure that they knew each other, but they were in the same at the same time going to Sacred Heart High School in Yonkers. Maury left that out of the book. Mythsell, what do you do with this information? That's what I don't understand. I could get why a pickled, probably cancer-ridden, absolute beast of a human being like Professor Horan traffics in this stuff. I can understand that. But you actually seem like if you were on our side, as you call it, like we're the sides. Who's thinking about this as sides? It's weird. You would actually be a valuable person because you seem reasonably intelligent. Like, I don't understand. What is the mental block here? Vinny and Danny was a spiritually sick snap suturer. And as the Queen Ruby says, it was whoosah. It was whoosah. So you have to overcome all of this, Mythsell. You have to overcome all of this, the lunatic, emotionally disturbed Chris Claw. And I don't know why Carl Denaro's still hanging out with you, especially because you're hanging out now with Professor Horan. Carl, your girl, Chris, is hanging out with the guy who said that you were shot because of your uncle working for Citibank. I mean, that's acceptable to you? You got angry at me because you saw me and Josh Zeman talking about a gardening project and you thought that we were conspiring against you. Even you remember that last look at Zeman's house where I knew I was never going to hear from you again. That smile that you gave me, I knew. And I was right. Never heard from you as a friend again after. You piggybacked on the popularity of this series to get what you wanted. And did you get what you wanted? So, like, what are we going to do here, guys? What's it going to take? Rena, that was a good question that you asked. Luckily, you have all of my research to help you answer it and to give you some sort of framework to take the argument even further. You have the Untermeyer Park hoax. Whatever it was that Mr. E saw, and do we really know that that's true? I mean, not for nothing, but every other one of Maury Terry's informants turned out to be a bald-faced liar and or manipulated. So even though Mr. E was a nice guy, he really was a nice person. Like, was he bullshitting us too? Like, we have to were all these hooded and robed cultists just some weird urban myth that went around after the wake of Maury Terry's articles? Like, you really got to wonder. It would not be the first time there was like a weird moral panic. There was a weird vibes going around in a neighborhood. It wouldn't be the first time that something like that has happened. So what I'm saying is, what's it going to take? And that is part and parcel, in a sense, with the eyes of Dr. Harry Harnash, Mythsell's, excuse me, newest article. So we'll just start this, and then we'll comment as we go, because I actually have a lot of fun stopping and commenting. So the eyes of Dr. Harry Harnash, revisiting the great enlightened society of oculists. Well, right, first of all, right there, it's like, okay, what's this got to do with Sam? Like, all right, when I read a story or a blog about Sam, I expect to see the words David Berkowitz, Pine Street, 44 caliber. At this point, I expect to see Wendy Savino's name thrown in the mix. Also, the groundbreaking work that Lorenzo and I did on Bronx Sniper, throwing him in the mix for that, which even though we've never said he was the Bronx Sniper, you can't deny that he should be considered given his proximity in the neighborhood and the criminology. But anyway, so, all right, oculists. All right. I'm reading about oculists. The following is an expansion of Some Wild Wag of an Oculist, a chapter in my 2020 booklet Before Son of Sam, The Submerged History of a Yonkers Cult. I gather that some buzz has recently been generated regarding cult activity in Yonkers during the 1920s. Where? Dude, I'm the vanguard of Son of Sam. There's nobody above what we're doing here. I hate to sound like that, but it's just the objective truth. I never heard of recent buzz except me making fun of it. That's the only place I've heard in Son of Sam where anybody is buzzing about the 1920s, whatever. How interesting. Almost as if the evidence couldn't be acknowledged until very, very official personages had granted their permission. Dude, what are you talking about? What? This all right. Coin of the Great Society of Oculists. The pinch nez rests atop a cataract needle as two cats observe two mice. All right, well, okay, great. Where's Sam? Gotta lie, no. If anybody wants to call in, that's fine now. We didn't get Mythsell calling in. To be fair, he's probably not watching. So, all right. So first of all, oculists. Let me look and see what an oculist is, because if I started this thinking I was going to be reading about Berkowitz, because this is ostensibly about the Son of Sam crimes, right? But all of a sudden I'm being asked to read about some great society of oculists. All right. So, whoa. So I looked up oculists. And an oculist is an outdated traditional term for an eye doctor. All right. So for some reason, we're talking about eye doctors now. Okay. I don't quite understand what eye doctors have to do with David Berkowitz wigging out on Pine Street after committing Wendy Savino, quickly leaving town the next month on a long road trip, interestingly enough. I don't see any talk about that, real subjects, but we're talking about eye doctors. Okay, well, fine. No, maybe it gets more interesting. The strangeness may have begun in Yonkers of the early 20th century. What strangeness? It's difficult to imagine that remote point in history as anything other than a series of sepia photographs or scratchy newsreel photographs of a Ford Model A puttering. Oh my God, that's wordy. But in the archives of the defunct Yonkers Statesman, later the Herald State, dude, that parentheses was not necessary. Nobody gives a shit that it was called later the Herald Statesman. In fact, nobody cares that it was called the Yonkers Statesman. But anyway, columns of faded newsprint offer indirect evidence that in 1930, the groundwork had been laid for a conspiracy which decades later allegedly involved numerous Yonkers physicians and other public figures, eventually culminating in the Son of Sam shootings. How? Just because you said it? Catalano, I saw your message. You're driving. So, all right. So this is kind of what Mythsell does. He starts a paragraph talking about sepia tones and Ford Model A's, and then quickly talks about women in cloche hats as if we know what a cloche hat is. Parentheses is unnecessarily the Yonkers Statesman, and then immediately calls that evidence, even though indirect, that a groundwork has been laid for a conspiracy. Oh, I don't quite get it, but all right. The first man to open an optician's office in 1904. We don't care about these parentheses. Here's a serious writing tip, and I know you hate to take it from me because, I've never done this before, right? I don't know what I'm talking. I used to write a Pulitzer Prize winning newspaper every week, damn it. The Riverdale Press. I worked there only for 7 months, but in that 7 months, I wrote hundreds of articles. Ran that entire paper almost with my articles and got stuff done for the first time. I'm actually responsible for lowering alternate side of the street parking rules in Riverdale, which might sound like nothing, but it's actually a huge, real deal. Something that only happened because I chose to put my mind to it, Mythsell. So I know a thing or two about writing. Stop with the parentheses. Was Dr. Harry Harnash. Little can be gleaned. All right, so now we're getting a history about some random eye doctor. Okay, so he was born in Russia in 1985. I'm just going to go through this. He reported to appeared in court after a woman named Agnes Smith filed a complaint against him. Smith, who lived at the same address, alleged that he made insulting remarks about her and had interrupted her in his sleep with loud talking. All right. The judge dismissed the complaint, warning that the doctor not to annoy Smith any further. On March 16th, Dr. Harnash, now described as an oculist and chiropractor, again, an eye doctor, old term. We're talking about the 1920s, so everything makes sense that he would be called an oculist. Molly Dunn charged that he had acted disorderly, but she was reluctant to testify in this. All right, so this dude sounded like a doctor who might have gotten drunk every now and then, and didn't seem to do anything really violent. He interrupted a woman in her sleep with loud talking. How does that have to do with Son of Sam? And then later on, some woman wouldn't testify against him. But so far, it doesn't seem very, I don't understand why you're talking about this. Had his brushes with the law been limited to such minor incidents, it would be easy to dismiss him as a rowdy but fundamentally harmless eccentric. Okay, so at least he admits that. Bellowing at odd hours and allegedly goosing a patient now and then. That's not, you don't know what he did because she didn't testify. But he found himself in serious trouble in 1930. On January 22nd, oh, it means something. There's a 22 there. Reported that Harnash and Malcolm Yohannan had been arrested for performing an illegal operation, an abortion, on a public school student in Yohannan's office. In a sworn statement, all right, so the men were tried and convicted. Yohannan was sentenced. We're just skimming over this. When he was released, Harry Harnash was finished in Yonkers. He relocated to Chicago, and when he was released, they called him a former eye specialist. But what potentially links Harnash's name to the Yonkers cult case? Okay, so here I expect to get actual evidence. Remember, now he's trying to set us up. Yo, Mythsell doesn't know NYC streets and pissy elevators. So he's trying to set us up here for, this is proof that the Son of Sam cult started in the 1920s. And this is proof, because otherwise, why would you even talk about an eye doctor from 1920? Like, this is inexplicable that you would bring this up. I could look in the archives of anything and look for a dude who performed an abortion. It was very common to perform illegal abortions. You know why? Because abortions were illegal. So every abortion was illegal. So, and I'm sure that there were a lot of abortions, because abortions, freaking people had them. It's just part of the human condition. Am I happy about abortions? No, I don't particularly like the thought of abortion. It's not something that makes me very happy. I think that if I was a man and was having a child and my wife aborted it, I would be very disappointed. that's another topic that is an interesting one to go into, the man's response to abortions, but that's forget about that. But this dude is now saying that some dude who purported an abortion with some dude named Johannan is all right. Let's get the evidence, because I'm a person that wants evidence. All right. So what potentially links Harnash's name to the Yonkers cult case? And remember, there was no Yonkers cult. That's for the newbies out there. I know that maybe some of you coming to me for the first time from Maury Terry can't get that through your head. As we see Mythsell, who's been around for years. I mean, we started as friends, him and I, or at least working partners. He knows that all of this stuff occurs, that all of our work is out there, right? But to the newbies out there, like, there was no Son of Sam cult. It didn't exist. It's an urban myth. It's an invention, a chimera or a chimera, a ghost that Maury Terry invented. Okay, so when this guy talks about, what potentially links Harnash's name to the Yonkers cult case? Remember, he's talking about a fairy tale. This is Little Red Riding Hood. This is Rumpelstiltskin. This is us actually talking about a fairy tale because it didn't exist. The answer to that question lies in the fact that Harry Harnash identified himself specifically as an oculist. All right. So the evidence is that Harry Harnash called himself an eye doctor. Doesn't sound like very good evidence to me. While it's true the term was still in use during the 1920s, it bore a connotation of quackery and was falling out of favor. Did he know that? We don't know that he knew that. Most eye physicians prefer to be identified by specialty of practice. So Harnash's use of the antique term oculist, it wasn't antique in those times. It may have been going out of style, but it wasn't antique. All right, so far that's not evidence. I posit that, all right, so we're back to the story. I posit that Harnash was not just an oculist, but an oculist. Oh, dude, Ruby. Hey, yo, I will. So he wasn't an oculist, but he was an oculist. Our man's an oculist, but with a capital O as opposed to a lowercase o. So what? All right. So he wasn't an oculist, but an oculist. All right. So in other words, that he belonged to the Great Enlightened Society of Oculists, Gesso, a German offshoot of Freemasons founded by Count Friedrich von August von Veltheim. The oculists record their secret initiation rituals in a manuscript called the Copiel Cipher. All right. So even if he was an oculist with a with a capital O, what does that got to do with Sam? When I read about Sam, I want to hear about the crimes. I want to hear about Pine Street. I want to hear about him living in his car between Coligny and Pine. I want to hear about Wendy Savino. I want to hear about the bribes of Terry. I want to hear about why he moved to Yonkers. I still think it's because of his aunt or cousin, Susan Sugar, who lived 2 blocks away. I think that that's significant. So we're reading a history, a very boring history about Harnash, an oculist who's not an oculist, but he's an oculist. And then we find out that oculism is Freemasonry with Val von Veltheim, Count Friedrich August von Veltheim, and you can screenshot this and read this boring shit if you want. To me, this dude looks a little weird, but you know, if you saw a picture of anybody in 1925, they might look weird, and he doesn't even really look all that weird to me. Just whatever. I mean, I would never know this dude existed. I don't need to know this dude existed. Here he's actually doing something good. He's giving the opportunity to the pupil schools of Yonkers, found they need glasses. He'd provide them free of charge. To me, Dr. Harnash sounds like a nice guy. Like, what's the deal, yo? Yo, I will. Forget about spell check, my man. What's the deal? Like, why are we saying that that a 1920s eye doctor who gives free glasses to children is somehow related to the later Yonkers cult? Like, where's the connection? If you could make a connection, then I'd be down. It would have to be serious, because think about this. This dude existed in the 1920s. So he was long, long dead by the time Berkey came about. And then how would he have influenced Berkowitz? And then you'd have to you'd have to do this all forensically. You'd have to whiteboard it out. You'd have to get all the players. You'd have to then connect them forensically with actual evidence, not just saying something. That's what Maury Terry did. He just said things and wrote things. So I don't know. To me, Mythsell, you're making Harnash look like a nice guy. So the case of Harnash represents just one circumstantial indication of cult activity. How? And then he goes to his other article. I've discussed some of the recent others. In 1922, the unearthing of a broken statue, which was of Demeter. Oh, Bakelite. Demeter, which has been buried on the Greystone estate 40 years under odd circumstances. No, it wasn't. There wasn't anything odd about the circumstances of that. It was some dude who threw a rock at the statue. The shift fell over and broke, and where the stress points were, the wrist, which you could just see, the wrist is very much of a stress point of a hand. If I fell on the hand here, my wrist would break most likely. The head broke, which is another stress point, and then maybe the dude went to hit it again. I don't know. I mean, is it that interesting that some dude broke a statue in the 1920s? Again, what's it got to do with Sam? When it comes to Sam, I don't give a shit about Christianity. I don't care about eye doctors or people who give free eyeglasses to pupils in the 1920s. I want to know about the crimes. I want to know about Maury Terry's bribes. I want to know why Berkowitz, forget about Maury Terry. That dude is dead. He's right now rotted. You know who's alive? Your friend Frank DeGennaro. Frank the Degenerate, the accoster of Savino. The guy who has been shamed in his community for good reason because he thought it was a good idea to go up to a Son of Sam victim and say, I'm friends with David. He didn't do it. He wants to talk to you. In what world did you think that was a good idea? Dude, you put her in the hospital. You should be absolutely and utterly ashamed of yourself. And from what I've seen recently, you are. So at least that's good. The contrition seems true. You also look a little healthier, I have to say. I did hear that day that you accosted Wendy that there may have been some dishevelment involved. Let's just put it that way. So what was he cutting out the eyes of German shepherds? So what's this dude talking about with Demeter statues? No, let's continue. All right. So the German shepherd attacks on Wicker Street and on Greystone property itself. So the dude looks up. So Mythsell looks up attacks of German shepherds, which I can look up very easily and find probably a lot of accounts of German shepherds biting people. What's that got to do with having anything to do with Berkowitz and Pine Street and the letters and back to Frank. He's still telling Frank that he did it with accomplices. This is how you know that Berkowitz is totally full of shit. Because why is he telling Caparelli, I did it alone. I felt terrible and I was party to Maury Terry's lies. And then he tells his friend, who happens to be filling up his commissary, and also giving him the ego boost and the narcissistic supply that he needs to keep it up, because he loves fooling low intelligence people. He actually says to DeGennaro, well, this is coming from Eric Galati, so you got to take it from a grain of salt, because I've seen that dude totally do 180s on what people actually said when he reports on it. But he said that he spoke to DeGennaro, and Berkowitz is still telling him that he did it with a cult. So let's just take away whether he did it with a cult or not, right? Forget that. Let's just say I believe Maury Terry. Let's just say that I'm a moron, just to take that out of the equation. There would still be a lie here, because he told one thing to one person and he told one thing to another. That's called lying. That's not Christian. I looked this up. That's one of the 10 commandments. You don't lie. Then Eric lied and said Wendy believed. Yeah, of course. Eric is totally a troublemaker. I don't know whether he's doing this on purpose, but he loves playing sides off against each other. It's funny to watch people fall for it. Or he's just stupid, although I don't believe that. But he does get things wrong when he reports. That's for sure. So my issue here is, why is he telling DeGennaro he worked with a cult? Catalano, I actually want your opinion of that. Why do you think, if you're still watching, why do you think, because I actually think you have good insight into this, why do you think he's telling DeGennaro that he was in a cult? Because DeGennaro believes that he's like Jonathan Mythsell. Evidence can't penetrate his mind, which is weird, because this guy was like a New York City school principal. Actually, I've seen a lot of New York City school principals. You do not have to be the sharpest tool in the shed to be a New York City school principal, believe me. So anyway, we'll see if Catalano chimes in on that. Maybe he's watching from before. I don't know. We'll see. Like, he's further back in the timeline. So this guy's talking about Oculus. He's talking about dead baby boys in Greystone, as if they find dead babies, and maybe that wasn't, maybe, I don't know what happened here, but what's it got to do with Sam? The presence of significant figures like John Randall and William Garvin later in the narrative suggests, what narrative? The narrative that Maury gave you, that he picked out of thin air, because for some reason Maury Terry had a sick grudge against his own neighborhood, which leads me to wonder what happened to old Mo. Again, people got all angry really early on in the video series because I posited that Mo was a victim of sexual abuse on Lake Avenue back when I believed that there was, actually, that stuff did go on. I mean, it goes on in every place. But there seemed to be a few predators on Lake Avenue, which Maury Terry definitely came in contact with as kids. So you got to wonder, like, what's with the grudge? But anyway, I'm going off on all sorts of stuff today, aren't I? So this guy's just bringing in anything, and like, dude, it's not sticking. You're throwing shit at walls, and all it's doing is leaving stinky, smelly stains that drip down, oozing down the walls. All right, so here there's a postscript. So Harnash died after falling 20 feet. Maybe he committed suicide. Maybe his wife pushed him out. We don't know. A Yonkers dentist. So now there's dentists involved. Was found dead. Nitrous oxide inhalator. Like Yohannan had been unwell. Suicide. What? What's this got to do with Sam? And then finally, we have no indication of what precipitated these men's illnesses or even they knew each other, but the timing raises suspicion. So this is a guy who, when I put out the Wendy Savino story, which was positive identification by a living victim, both historically in 1977, reporting to law enforcement in the form of the Bronx DA that David Berkowitz was her shooter, willing to go into a civil case in 1980 naming David Berkowitz as her shooter, with the criminology as of being a Son of Sam case, with the smiling shooter, with the identical sketch, with it happening in the same area as the first official shooting, in the same time period, and having NYPD immediately connect her shooting to Donna Lauria. With all of that evidence, Mythsell says that that's not good enough for him, and that's fine. That's fine. I'm not litigating Savino anymore. Whatever you want to believe on Savino is up to you. But you're telling me that that's not evidence, but you're building a case for the Son of Sam cult being around in the 1920s, and your papers are ending where we have no indication, or even if they knew each other, in an article that's already filled with weird leaps of logic. You end by saying, yeah, at the end, we don't have any idea. Now I'm going to just ask some questions that are leading my very mentally ill, child porn obsessed readers, absolutely spiritually sick people who obsess all day about child trafficking. I never think about that ever in my day-to-day life. You're just going to say, did Johannan find himself a compromission? How did Sweeney fit into the picture? Perhaps some secret ritual have gotten out of hand, resulting in an accidental death. The answers remain elusive. 1946, however, appears to have been a pivotal year in the Yonkers cult development. Okay, now we're going to talk about this. Marking the arrival in November from England of a self-identified druidistic talk now comes into play. He's talking about druids. He's talking about druids. No Mythsell article can ever end without a mention of druidistic activity. We'll get to that in a second. Well, actually, let me finish this because I saw that Catalano responded. With a scar on his right cheek. Okay, so now having a scar on your right cheek is somehow related to Son of Sam. Okay, joined by his wife in 1947, this individual is said to perform rituals, including the killings of dogs in Untermeyer Park. Now, I just want to say, I'm not going to say this woman's name because I'm sure she doesn't want her name out there. But I spoke to this woman very early on in my video series back in 2021. She was a girl from Yonkers back in the 50s, and apparently her parents brought her to Untermeyer Park, and she said there were rituals there with druids, and she was Moselted. Now, I don't know whether that's true, again, but even if it is true, it's horrible. I know the story. I have it all written down on my notes. I have her name, everything, the detailed notes on my conversation with her. And it was fascinating to me because all of a sudden I was hearing these stories about Maury Terry is the truth teller, but like, that's all I got. And what's it got to do with Sam? So Frank's either a liar or he's getting jerked around for commissary money. Right. That's the only two ways. And what pisses me off is that the logic, right, that we now have proven where Frank DeGennaro is hearing one thing from Berkowitz, and then Berkowitz is telling his other Christian friend, he's lying. Yo, Catalano, he's lying to two Christians. He's lying to two of his fellow members of the fellowship and brotherhood of Christians. That's not very Christian to me. Like, that ain't Christian. I mean, it just isn't, right? When you're telling one thing to one person and telling another thing to another, well, you're lying to one person, and we already know what the truth is. The truth is, Catalano, I'm not putting the words in your mouth, but the truth is, Catalano, that we didn't need Caparelli's book, okay? We had already proven Berkowitz worked alone. Now, was it great to have? Of course it was great to have Caparelli. I love the fact that you got Berkowitz on record totally denying his role with Maury Terry, saying he did all the shootings alone, he lied in the 1990s, and then we were able, of course, to back all that up with our research. It's a shame we actually never did a show on it, but for some reason, Mike, I was toxic to you, but you'd rather hang out with Rocker Mike? Dude, I thought you were smarter than that. Like, where did that get you? I know we both got into the Netflix thing, but you weren't in it very long. Anyhow, so yeah, so this dude, Frank, this is the only two. So what's up with Frank? Like, that's not Christian. Like, what's going on with all these people? Like, Frank, ask your friend why he's lying to you. Or ask why he's lying to Mike Caparelli, because there's only two options there. And remember, Frank, I have nothing to do with this. I'm not the one who, like your friend Berkowitz, took guns out and shot people in the head. I'm not the one who did that. In fact, your friend killed my friend's friend. And in the case of Wendy, your friend shot my friend in cold blood 5 times and ruined her life, in a sense. And then, of course, you put her in the hospital 50 years later because you just have to say, he didn't do it, when he did it. You have to be an idiot not to realize that he did it. And then when he tells you that he didn't do it, that's the same shit as him lying between DeGennaro and Caparelli. You understand what I'm saying? There's so many things. I'm actually ashamed of a lot of the Son of Sam community. And I have to say this with a heavy heart. Even people who are friends of mine, nobody took the time to sit and analyze that NYPD tape and compare it to his freaking article that he wrote about it, and also compare it to the facts of the case and to things that you know, and realize where he was bullshitting, because it's so obvious. This was the first documented thing of him talking to cops about Son of Sam in the last 50 years. And everybody is ignoring it. I get it. You hate my guts, but you're not going to get very far. And now, my friends, you're taken out of this. Like, now we're come back into the fold. Now I'm talking about passive aggressive people like Cracklin' Rosie and dummies like Rena and idiots like Rocker Mike. You're not going to get far by ignoring the work. You gotta talk about it truthfully, and you gotta deal truthfully with what your friend David Berkowitz is all about, because he's a fucking liar and he loves doing it. That's what I don't understand that you don't get, and that's not Christian. That is not Christian. Hey, yo, Derek, is that Christian? Lying? I'm SNK. I'm not going to get into the weeds with Caparelli. I respect Caparelli greatly and I respect your opinion. I'm not trying to change your feelings about Mike Caparelli. He's a big boy, just like I can handle the criticisms and the hatred and the statements where people question his integrity. He can handle it too. In fact, he handles it much better than I do. But I have respect for what he did with Berkowitz. Right. Derek of the world has concurred with the G-Man of the alleged planet. that lying to somebody, whether it be Caparelli or DeGennaro, is not Christian. And hey, DeGennaro, why don't you come on the show and let's just talk about this one subject. Forget about your shameful episode with Wendy Savino where you were so dumb or out of your mind. One of those two. Like, that was a very dumb move that you did going up to Wendy Savino. You say, oh yeah, it was great. She invited me over to the far wall and took my number. She was so friendly. She didn't feel threatened. Dude, she was terrified. And you put her back into the mode that she was getting shot by David Berkowitz. She was trying to survive what she thought was going to be an ambush. She was trying to make you be nice and to trying to pretend that she was interested in you. And in a way, she was trying to get your name and number so she could report you immediately to the police, you dummy. We can put that all under the bridge. If you came on, it would be a blockbuster. Actually, nobody knows who you are. That's fine. But come on with your friend Rocker Mike. He looks like he could use a pick-me-up. And we know he's obsessed with me. Come on and let's talk about why it is that Berkowitz told one thing to Caparelli and he told DeGennaro, because this is all coming from Galati, who's reporting this. Did Galati get that wrong? If he did, I'll apologize to you because I know that Galati gets a lot of things wrong. I'll do that gladly. But if he's telling you that he still did it with a cult, either you're the dumbest person on earth, you're willfully ignorant, or you just don't care because he didn't do it with a cult. You know that to be true. And it's actually so disgusting and very much not Christian to the victims, including my friend Wendy, that you would still continue with this charade of pretending that your friend is somehow pious and somehow Christian. Caparelli, you get a pass. I got no beef with you. I want no problem with Caparelli. I still think he's not very media savvy. He didn't realize who the better person to ally with would have been. And I think that hurt him in the end. But that's all right. I'm not interested in being a salesman for Caparelli's book. The point that I'm trying to make is he's lying to somebody. And I already know that he's lying to me. Like, I don't need Berkowitz's admission that he did Wendy to know that he did Wendy. Like, it doesn't mean anything to me. I expect the lie from a liar. So anyway, I don't know how I got from Mythsell to this topic of alleged and so-called talking about DeGennaro, but these people have been just acting weirdly lately. Like, they came to me for a truce. They actually did that. They came to me for a truce through a third party who I won't name. And they admitted behind the scenes. They said a few things. They said, we don't want to fight with Manny anymore. It's really taking a lot out of us. We're all emotionally exhausted from trying to fight this guy. And the thing is, all that's true, I'm sure. But dude, you're not fighting me because you have no effect on me or my work. You all tried to get me canceled from Netflix. And look what happened. I dominated the screen. Did it have any effect positively or negatively in my life? No, it had no effect. I'm talking about the Netflix documentary, but also your rantings and ravings. It just has no effect. So you're just killing yourselves. And Rocker Mike, from your recent poetry, it sounds like there's some serious shit going on in your life. And so I'm not going to pile on because despite what you think about me, I do have sympathy when I recognize that a man is down, and I was ready to truce with you guys. But then your friend Chris Claw got involved, and it was, Manny, you have to stop doing this, and you have to stop doing that, and you have to stop doing this, and you have to stop doing that 5 or 6 times over. And my simple question was, fine, I'm ready to calm it down a little bit in the spirit of peace, but what do I get in return? And the answer was, fuck all, nothing. You get nothing in return. In fact, I'm going to tell Berkowitz to sue you. This lunatic Chris Claw actually thinks that people are going to care about what Berkowitz, his feelings got hurt, or even that his rights were violated. Dude, nobody cares. You don't understand. Your friend's a mass murderer. Like, I don't make friends with mass murderers. You guys are all sitting there talking about, it's David's birthday. I love Geminis. Yeah, the best people are Geminis. Well, I'm a Gemini. Do I get included in that? So it's like crazy shit. Now you got people allying with each other. It's like this weird fluid dance of people who all hated each other at once. And I'm including Galati and Rena in that. And Rosie's over here with her passive aggressive nature, which I actually think is very off-putting and unwarranted. And it's just strange seeing, it's like the waves of the ocean mixing and then flowing out from each other. And it's interesting to watch, because people who should not be friends with each other, like Carl Denaro and Professor Haran, are now linked through the lunatic Chris Claw. And I'm just sitting back and watching it all unfold. To me, it's interesting. I know to the audience, you have no idea who I'm talking about. And hopefully I was at least entertaining enough to keep you occupied for this hour and 17 minutes. So my friends, hopefully I will not get a copyright strike as we go out to, and I'm going to play the whole thing, the wonderful and beautiful early vintage Menudo. Mi banda toca rock.
Y mi banda toca rock, lo demás cuando lo piden. Sabemos bien que aquí hacer de todo lo exigen. Es un rock chiquillo, sabor más bien latino. Esta música es esperanza, esta música es paciencia. Es como un tren que ha pasado con un cargo de emociones. Nos pasó en la estación, pero dormíamos sentados.
Y mi banda toca rock.
Porque nos ve y porque no puede, y porque falta de ir por correr tras su quimera.
Ruby!
Despierten, no,
Oh, no, todavía no. Y no nos paren, no, no.
todavía no. Y mi banda toca el rock, cambia caras cuando lo piden. Desde que entras el mismo, casi siempre lo exigen. Nos esperan en la bolsa con la música latina. Nos esperan también bailando y 1000 vueltas vamos dando. Nos esperan en la frontera con el auto bloqueado. Más de rock habrá pasado, la música ha llegado.
Es un rock chiquillo, está con la piel latino.
Sin su pasaporte, lo seguimos
No penetren en sus muros.
hace brecha en la puerta. Hasta el fondo él te dice que tu alma no está muerta.
Y no despierten, no, no, todavía no. Y no nos paren, no.
Todavía no. Y mi banda toca el rock, es una eterna salida. Ya la vienen ondas medias y en frecuencia modulada. Es un rock chiquillo, sabor más bien latino. Esta música es esperanza, esta música es paciencia, es como un tren que ha pasado con un cargo de emociones. Nos pasó en la estación, pero dormíamos sentados y mi mano cerró. Porque nos ve y porque no puede, y porque falta de ir por correr tras su quimera. Todavía no nos pare, no. Todavía no.
See you next time, guys.